for me, I look at CPA as like the highest bar within our profession, the top designation.
Hey, Shakor, how are you?
Hey, Rosie, nice to meet you.
Thank you for the interview today. So I met Shakor at the AI CPA Engage in 2023, and I was very impressed with his discussion about his CPA career path. So that's why I would love to interview him today to share more details about how he gets to where he is today. So first and foremost, can you please just introduce a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this interview today. As Rosie mentioned, my name is Shakor Jukes. I'm a CPA as well. I currently work at Amazon as a senior program manager. Been involved in a lot of different things within the profession. Currently in New Jersey, so very excited to kind of have this discussion with you, kind of get a little bit into my background today, and connecting with everyone.
Let's start from very beginning. When you went to college, why did you pick accounting? Why didn't you pick anything else?
Yeah, so for me, my journey in accounting started even before college. I actually, in high school, I went to like a full tech trade school is where I did accounting. And so my trade was like accounting. So I've been doing accounting since high school, sophomore year of high school. And so throughout that time for sophomore year to senior year is when I did accounting. And then my senior year, I took a college level accounting course through the university that I ended up going to as well too. So I can say I've been committed to accounting since high school days, and then it just kind of transitioned over into my collegiate career as well. And so I was stuck in it. I never decided to, or I never ventured to try anything else. And so I've been in accounting this entire time.
Did you like it in high school?
Yeah, in high school it was definitely cool. It was a different experience in terms of working with numbers. I was always a numbers guy. Always was curious about working with finance and money. And so learning the basics in high school was definitely a good foundational start. And I think it helped me out as well too in my career. And it was just a good path. And it gave me a different point of view of working with, not just your traditional math classes and things like that. So overall, I think it helped at least give me some guidance. Most students, when they go to college, they don't know what they want to major in. And so for me to have the opportunity to kind of already have that college level of experience with accounting and understand intro to accounting, things like that, I think helped me at least set the foundation for where I am in my career today.
Yeah, so who introduced you to accounting when you were in high school?
To be honest, no one. It literally just fell into it. From my freshman year of high school, I went to a different school, then I transferred, and it was like, hey, you got to kind of choose a specialty per se. I was like, hey, I know I was really good, and it was always something I was interested in. None of the other things interest me too much. There are some mechanical things, culinary, and things like that. I was like, nah, that's not my type of interest. And so accounting was the one that was the only business focus related activity that they had. And so I would say I fell into accounting. Accounting chose me. I didn't choose accounting.
Well, we are lucky to have you in these accounting professions because the further we go to this discussion, for people who are listening to this, you will see why I made this statement at the very beginning. So after you graduate from college, you start a job in public accounting. Did anyone recommend you at that time if you should go to public or private? Or what made you decide that you want to start with public first?
Yeah, so like actually, maybe I'll take a little bit of a detour. Like for me, because in college I was an athlete, so I was on a track team, so I did track for my first 3 years. I was a walk-on, but I knew that I wanted to start working after college. And then, to be honest, like coming out of college, I didn't have a lot of like opportunities, right? Job offers. The university that I went to, I wouldn't say it was a hotbed for recruiting, especially accounting talent. We did have some companies that did come out, but because I was an athlete, I didn't do any internships. Track was pretty much all year round. So for me, coming out of college, it was actually a little bit more difficult. When I graduated undergrad, I knew I wanted to work in accounting. I didn't have any job opportunities immediately, so what I did was I went on to grad school to get my MBA, and so that gave me a little bit more cushion time to find, that first accounting gig, being that I didn't really have any experience coming out of college, and so during my MBA program and studies, I just got involved. I had a really good mentor who was an accountant actually, and he did a phenomenal job in getting me signed up with AICPA, NABA, all the different accounting societies, and our local state society as well too in New Jersey. And that gave me exposure to companies and also just the profession in general. So like in grad school, I went to grad school for a couple years, and then I finally, after hours and numerous job applications, I finally found the opportunity to start working in accounting. And I actually started in private accounting first. So I did more like back office accounting work at a small retail company in New York City. And I did more back office accounting work. And then that's when I kind of pivoted into public accounting. But to answer your question, I don't think I had anyone that was really there to tell me like, hey, you should do public versus private. I just knew I wanted to be in a profession. I had friends that started off in public accounting first. As I mentioned, mine was a little bit different, my path to accounting. And then when I did migrate over to public, it was more so about because I knew I wanted to become a CPA, and then, with the CPA licensure and studying underneath or getting experience underneath a CPA was very important. So I know I need to get that public accounting experience. So that's why I kind of migrated over to the public accounting profession.
Why did you know that you wanted to be a CPA?
For me, I was like, hey, I was already committed to the profession, or, this being my career goal. And for me, I look at CPA as like the highest bar within our profession, the top designation. And so if I'm going to be in this profession long term, I knew that in order for me to continue to grow my career and succeed as well too, and give career flexibility as well too, becoming a CPA was pretty much like that top thing to do. And so once I reached that, I knew that, I was at the top in terms of accolades within a profession.
So did you try to pass the CPA exam right after you finished your MBA degree?
Yeah, I did. I was working full time, and I started. Funny story. Actually, in grad school, wrapping up my graduate program, there was a review course boot camp for the CPA exam, and I personally would not recommend it. It was like 8 hours on a Saturday and Sunday, where we'll meet in person and go through all the CPA like studying for like I forget. I think we were starting with like reg, but it was an intense boot camp. But it was really hard to kind of juggle that while working and things like that. And so I did start immediately after graduating grad school. But I would say I probably spread it out. I tried to do the boot camp route, but it was not the most easiest path. So I decided to kind of just do more independent studying and break the exams down in smaller pieces as well.
So did you have any issues, any challenges when you study for the CPA exam besides just avoiding the bootcamp courses?
Like my CPA journey was it was very tricky, and we can go through it. So like my biggest challenges, I felt numerous times. I'm not a person who passed all four in the first try. I do know people that did that. Hats off to them. They're amazing people. For some reason, exams was not. It wasn't my easiest thing. But my I took reg, which was the tax part. I took that first, and I actually passed it on the first try. I and at this time, when I was working full time in public accounting as an auditor, and I passed tax, which was, I don't know, so for some reason came to me pretty easy. And then the second one I took was audit, which gave me the worst. It gave me the hardest challenges. When I say like, I probably took audit probably like 5 to 6 times before I actually passed it. And most of the times when I was taking the exam, I was failing by like 2, 3 points. And so like for most people that can be like, hey man, I'm just quit. I'm not going to do this. And it was it's a time commitment. It's an investment. But for me, the way I looked at just the overall CPA journey was that, if I sacrifice this year or two with early on in my career, I can live my career the rest of my life as a CPA, make a little bit more money, things like that. And so I looked at it as like, and also I'm a person is like, I didn't have a company who paid for my CPA content, like the review course or even my exams. And these things are expensive, especially to come out of pocket. Just recently graduating. College kids, you come out broke. So, I'm just early into my career, so I really, invested a lot of my money into it. And so, for me, I looked at it as like, hey, I'm investing in myself and my career. And it might not be easy. It might be challenging. It might look different than the people you were studying with or that you're colleagues with, but at the end of the day, like, I know that it was a passable exam, and I was committed to ensuring that I got my money's worth and got my return on my investment as well too. So the CPA exams, I failed, I passed. My biggest thing that I passed, so I did reg, eventually passed audit. I maybe had to take BUC maybe 2 times, and then and this when the 18-month rule was in effect, where if you have 18 months before you lose credit for your first one. I remember I was down to my last exam, which was FAR, before I lost credit for reg, which was the first one, and I passed. And and before I lose credit, I was like, hey, I need to go take this exam. I drove an hour away to take this FAR exam in Pennsylvania, and I take the exam. To be honest, I don't know, maybe I have exam anxiety, but anytime I used to leave out an exam, I was like, man, I failed the exam. I used to be really hard on myself and really down. And then, long story short, is I got my results back, and I had fell far by like 4 points, right? It's always around that 3 or 4 points. So now, instead of having like 3 exams passed, now I'm back down to 2 because I lost credit for reg, and I still have to take FAR again. And so, but as I said, I just continued to utilize that as motivation. I retook reg again, passed it, and then I took FAR again, and I actually scored my highest score on FAR. Most people find, that's normally the most difficult exam for people, but for me, I scored my highest on it. I don't know, I think at that point I was just so locked in and determined, like, hey, I'm gonna pass this. I'm at the finish line. I've already had all the experiences. I lost credit, I fell multiple times, like anything that you can name, I've been through it during this CPA journey. But it truly, when I look back on it, it made me who I am today, and the ability to persevere and just continue to aim. No matter the obstacles that you had to go through to become a CPA, I really appreciated the journey. I learned a lot about myself too, along my CPA journey. When I think back to studying, like, I never even studied that much in college. Like, where I used to go study for my CPA exam, so I used to work during the day, and then in the evenings I'll go study. I used to go up to my college library because I live pretty close, and I spent more time in that library studying for the CPA exam than I did all 4 years of undergrad. So it was like I don't know who I became. I used to, go into these like little private rooms and whiteboard, and I used to be in there I used to close down the library. I used to be the last person in the library every night, and I was like, man, like it showed me a different side of myself. I had to sacrifice even like, hanging out with friends, going to different trips. I did have some FOMO, fear of missing out. But as I mentioned, like my whole perspective was that if I sacrifice this time now, I'll be a CPA. I can enjoy those same festivities a year later, and I can have a little bit more money. And I can spend more. I can splurge more. Do whatever more, right? And so the CPA, like the process and the journey. Like I said, it teaches you about yourself, but two, it also gives you that designation that will help you succeed within this profession.
Wow, congrats! You're so determined and focused. Yeah. That's a great story about CPA exam. So I failed reg and audit by 2 or 3 points. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I know your feeling. And I passed the last section in the last week of the 18-month window. So,
wow.
So I got a little bit more lucky than you at that point. But I was so excited. I was like, phew, I don't have to do this again anymore. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. Oh my gosh.
It's a breath of fresh air, for sure. It was a breath of fresh air. But like I even think back, like, because I was so used to, I was already in a mindset of studying so much. Like once I was done, I was like, what do I do with this free time now? Like it's like I had no sense of like what do I do now? And it's like you dedicated so much time, but like I appreciate the journey. If I could do it all over again, I would too. And that's why I'm always excited to talk about it. Obviously, like it's always good. Everyone has their own experience, and everybody's journey is different. But at the end of the day, like you and I can sit here today and say that we're CPAs. Nobody cares about if you scored, 99s on all the exams. No one knows if you failed 2, passed all 4. At the end of the day, that journey to just becoming a CPA and living your life living the rest of your life as a CPA is a very enjoyous one.
Yes, kudos to CPAs.
Yes, for sure.
Yes, after you pass the CPA exam, at that time you're working in public as an auditor, right? So correct. When you pass that CPA exam, did you still work at a small CPA firm, or are you working at the ISM at that time?
Yeah, so actually during my CPA studies, I was still studying when I switched firms. So I went from a small firm locally in New Jersey that did more nonprofit government type audits, and I knew I wanted to get bigger company, bigger public accounting firm, exposure. And so actually through some involvement with AICPA, I had a chance to meet a lot of individuals, and one firm did take a great liking to me. That's what eventually became RSM. And so during my CPA studies, I switched firms. And so when I passed my CPA exam, I was at RSM at that time.
So when you switch your firm, do you know that you're going to stay in public for long term at that moment?
Honestly, I did not know. I did not know how long, or I didn't have a time frame on it. I knew that I was still getting my CPA license, and it's very important as you progress within public accounting. And so I knew that obtaining that was the number one goal. And then the second for me was the exposure, and I wanted to go to a bigger firm to get broader exposure to, various sizes of clients, not just be particularly focus on nonprofit and government clients. I wanted to kind of work with some other clients to get exposure. I was still pretty early in my career, and so truly I fell into audit because coming out when I worked at a back office accounting work, it was just more like bookkeeping or journal entries and things like that. And then the small firm that I went to, they only did audit, so there wasn't a tax arm and there wasn't consulting. It was strictly an audit shop. So I kind of fell into audit, and so I was just like, all right, this is what my entry point. But I was only working with a small size clients, and it was really locally, and I knew that I wanted to get bigger company, bigger client base exposure. And so that's what helped me migrate over to a bigger firm where I got that exposure. So one, it was becoming a CPA, and then also getting that broader exposure to clients in the various industries that do exist.
Have you ever thought that you would want to be a tax preparer at that time when you jump in public instead of being an auditor at the very beginning?
No, truthfully, I starting my career, like I knew I majored in accounting, but I didn't know many of the career paths that exist, and it wasn't until later in my career as I continued to get more involved. I did through AICPA when I was in grad school. I did ASLW, Accounting Student Leadership Workshop. And that's when I got a little bit of a taste of like, hey, we can do it's accounting is more than just audit. It's more than tax preparing. There's a lot of different career paths that you could go down. But like coming out of college, I didn't know. So honestly, I would just take in whatever job that was offered to me. As I mentioned, I didn't have any opportunities coming out of college, and so it was just like, hey, if I can get my foot in the door. That was the number one goal. But then once I started getting more of a taste of the different things, I started to build my own palette of what I'm interested in doing within my profession and within my career as well too. But early on, if you say, hey, I'll give you a tax roll, I'm like, all right, let's do it, and I'll figure it out from there. So I didn't really have a preference per se.
Yeah. So. Sorry, my dog. You work in public probably 3 years and a half. So in those 3 years and a half, what was the best thing in public accounting that you liked the most before you moved to private?
For me, it was going to the various different clients. As an auditor, we were never in the office. It was a very limited time we was in the office. We were always on a client site, and so the client site was per se our office. And so for me, it was just going to the various, like the change of sceneries. Like there's some client offices that is just like you're just in a little room somewhere at a table with the rest of the audit team, and there are some that really took good care of you. And so the travel, most of my travel was local, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. So I didn't really go far for most of my clients, but I like being around people. I'm probably not the most vocal person when I'm around people, but I like seeing the different environments and the change of environments. I think it was really cool, and then just working with the different clients as well too. Every client was unique. Different, although it could be similar industries. Everyone has unique way of engaging and working with the team. And so from my experience of what I truly enjoyed was, and also our audit teams, there weren't always the same people. I work with different managers. Obviously, as you get further along, but early on when you're staff, you kind of get on different projects and things like that. So you're not always working with the same people. So you get a chance to meet other people within the company, and you're not working with the same people all the time. So those are the two main things that I think were really important that I truly embrace working in public accounting and working as an auditor. It's just a different teams that you work with, the different people that you get to meet, the ability to work more because you're providing service to a client, so just that client engagement as well too, and working with a variety of different clients.
Yeah. And so, what's the worst thing in public accounting, in your opinion, then?
The worst thing. Worst thing. The worst thing for me was.
You can say nothing is bad.
Yeah, I'm saying no. Like I can't really say I had a bad experience. If you want me to, the biggest difference was pay. To be honest, like leaving public accounting and going to private accounting, or the immediate pay bump that you do receive. Maybe long term things probably even out, but that just that jump, the pay was definitely much more significant. So I wouldn't say it was like horrible or anything. That's not why I left public accounting, but I think that did play a factor into it. Other than that, that different people have different experiences. My experience was much different. I know some people talk about like busy season and being burnt out from that. I've never worked those type of hours where I felt burnt out. I think the teams that I worked on were pretty good, and the clients that I worked on was pretty good as well too. So I didn't really have those experiences. I think if anything, it was the repetitiveness of what you do as an auditor as well too. Like the same type of audit procedures I'm doing for one client, I'm doing the same thing for the next client. So the ability to innovate at that time was very small. So I think over time it just became like just hamster wheel, just the same cycle over and over and over. And so I would say probably those are a couple things that dissuaded me away from public accounting.
So that
and
is
also, yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry. No, I was gonna say, and also like when you think about and maybe why and probably what played, and like I said, these aren't. It just there are things that do scare you as you get further along within your public accounting journey. Just the more responsibilities that you take on in a workload or just the hours commitment. You do see people kind of burn out and drop off over a certain time, and I just didn't want to be that person. And like for me, I don't know what it takes to be a partner, or at a big company like that, but I never wanted to become a partner, and maybe it's just because I was just not knowledgeable of what it takes to become there. But when I just seen that lifestyle or what it takes to get up there, it just wasn't a path that truly interests me.
So that's the motivation why you transit from public to private, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Like for me, I knew early on, it's like, hey, I don't want to become a partner. Like that just wasn't an end goal for me. And so it's just like, hey, that's not the career path I want to go down. Two, I was really, as you get further along in your career, you almost specialize within the industry. And I was still, even though I migrated, changed firms, I was still more so in not-for-profit government. And to be honest, those type of client bases are easy, but it just doesn't interest me. It's not like, it's not flash. It's not some of the big companies you think about, like the big tech companies and working on those type of engagements and seeing their offices and stuff like that. It just wasn't the same type of feel. So I knew that it was best for me early on in my career. If this wasn't something I wanted to do long term, it's best to get out as sooner rather than later before you get too deep into specializing in different areas. So while I was still touching base on a couple different industries, I thought it was just best for me to leave at the point when I did. And so it was more of a career transit or career growth strategy. I appreciate the experience because it did help me foundationally when I did go from public to private. But for me, it's just like, partner just wasn't at that time wasn't in the cards for me.